Let Eon come and find me here in Bellwood, and when he does, we'll get him.
Just where I wanted to spend fifth period.
So boom, right? Recently, I've been thinking about accuracy in adaptations, and if it really matters as long as it keeps the spirit of the original. This got me thinking about adaptations that actually do shoot for accuracy, and one of the first movies I can think of that does that besides Spider-Man 1 is Ben 10, Race Against Time. I've enjoyed this movie ever since seeing it in full as a kid. You can tell by watching it that the people working on it really loved the show and wanted to make a good adaptation, but the '07 TV movie budget really held them back in terms of what they could actually do. I actually still have the original DVD I got as a kid. I didn't get it in '07, but I've had it for so long that I kind of forgot when I actually did. I thought it'd look something like my old Spider-Man DVD because of how much I've watched it, but somehow it's basically crystal clear. Can't say the same about the cover though. I don't know what the fuck happened to get all these dings and scratches. On the topic of the cover though, this shit is very nostalgic to me. I used to spend an unusual amount of time just analyzing the art, especially because I love that Omnitrix prop so much that I'd lie, cheat, and steal to get it.
Green, red, green, red. That's pretty cool.
The special features give a further look into the production of the movie, even offering a glimpse at some of the storyboards. There's more than I expected here. Interviews with the cast and director, multiple behind-the-scenes sequences, and even the Fried Dynamite segment for the movie that aired on TV, which reminded me that this shit even existed. So does anybody know what bro is doing nowadays, or remember this shit at all? You can tell from these just how much passion went into this. It's just kinda tough how much you can also tell the budget gimped them a little bit. Set designs, makeup, props, compositing, and most of the CG look good, but goddamn the rest of the CG can get janky. As a kid, I loved the transformation sequences because I used to spend all day on YouTube watching live action Ben 10 vids, but as I watch them more and more, both back then and now, I start to notice how weird they can look. These scenes are probably where the budget is its most noticeable. Like I can see the vision, my lenses are just a little dirty. Before that realization though, they looked perfect. I watch them so much that the music from them occasionally still plays in my head. It makes sense since a lot of the music in the movie sounds exactly like the show. Some of it would even be used in the show at some point if my memory serves me right, and it even begins with a remix of the show's theme song. Outside of those sequences though, the aliens do look pretty good. The compositing on them is consistently good, and just like when I was a kid, it's the little details that make me love them. Heat Blast has heat waves around him, which as a power maniac is a detail that always makes me happy. Grey Matter's transformation is probably the goofiest one here, but his actual model looks really good, and he even has his own little theme song when he shows up, just like in the show. Wild Mutt is my favorite alien, so him just being there is enough to love. I used to really love how his fur looked back then. It doesn't look nearly as good to me now, but it's better than whatever the fuck this cutout's got going on in the background with the BTS footage. And Diamond Head leaves shards of crystals behind him when he shoots them and whenever he gets hit. Even outside the aliens though, the effects for Eon's blast, his costumes, and the ships of his race look really nice, especially the way you can see his makeup get older throughout the movie. Oh yeah, I probably should talk about the fucking movie itself, shouldn't I?
You don't have a choice. Neither of us do.
The plot of this movie was a first for the series at the time. The show was a road trip, so you didn't really get to see the Tennysons stay in one place often. Even in the animated movie Secret of the Omnitrix is a space road trip. This movie was the first attempt to ground them in one location, and a lot of the beginning focuses on Ben having to adjust back to normal life, both without constantly having to fight something and keeping his summer exploits a secret. Gwen and Grandpa Max seem to be adjusting just fine though, which was always a bit odd to me. Max makes sense since this wouldn't be the first time he's gone from that type of life back to a normal one, but Gwen should probably have just as much trouble adjusting as Ben, especially since according to the pop-up trivia her family also moved to a different part of Bellwood, so she should be having some trouble adjusting, let alone how much apparently giving up her magic in an attempt to get back to normal should also be affecting her. They don't even mention her magic aside from this one line, and I'm not even 100% sure that's what this was.
What's this stuff?
Magic tricks for the talent show. I bought a kit at the Toy Emporium. Don't worry, I'll handle the actual magic. You can just stand there and give me stuff.
This was the one thing that bothered me about the plot as a kid. I didn't even read that pop-up trivia until now, so most of it sounds like some bullshit they made up after the fact, like the hands of Armageddon emitting weird energy fluctuations that made it impossible to use her magic. They probably just didn't have the budget for it with everything else they were doing, but I feel like there could have been a better way to go about it than basically ignoring it in movie and making up some bullshit later. Max feels like he was implemented quite well though. He's more country than he usually is, but he still behaves and acts exactly how you you expect Max would. He's a skilled plumber and a stern guiding parental figure, but above all else, he loves his grandkids and would do anything he can to protect them.
I won't let anything hurt you, Ben. Please don't tell your parents.
They really sell the relationship and bond that him and Ben have throughout. Gwen kinda gets left out of shit that isn't her and Ben's usual back and forth until near the end, but the movie's only like an hour long, so you gotta cut them some kinda slack. How far they're willing to go for each other really gets tested once the plot kicks into gear. In the prologue, Ben encounters Eon for the first time while already heat blast. He seemingly wins the fight, but after some scenes of Ben getting fucked over at school, him and Gwen notice something weird in the picture taken earlier. After some CSI type shit, they clear it up to find that Eon's been stalking him. Max explains that the Plumbers, this series' galactic enforcement organization, have been fighting him for centuries over a device called the Hands of Armageddon. After going to a plumber base to make sure he really did escape, they discover a destroyed office and a living corpse. That's Constantine Jacobs. He was stationed here, and when Eon escaped, he used his powers to age him unnaturally until he became this. In his dying breaths, he reveals what Eon is really after, and has apparently been after this whole time: Ben. Now, it isn't explained at this point in the movie, but the reason Eon needs Ben is because he wants to reawaken his great ways from their slumber using the hands. But he's too old and weak from his time jumping to activate them himself, so he needs to scan his DNA into the Omnitrix, where presumably his DNA will carry his personality, much like Ghost Freak's race does. The rest of the movie is about his attempts to catch Ben and make him transform by force. He's thwarted a lot, but he's never made to seem incompetent. He's constantly one step ahead in getting the drop on the other characters, which the pop-up trivia would make you believe is because this isn't the first time he's done this, failing multiple times before and learning from each attempt. But the movie has a much more confusing reason with this little reveal.
Have you ever wondered why the Omnitrix only allows you to change for 10 minutes at a time? It's a fail-safe. So that the DNA of the alien life form is trapped within the Omnitrix. Don't overwhelm you when they take you over. I came here in a desperate mission to rescue my people. With the Hands of Armageddon, we could be reborn on Earth. But in order to do that, I needed to find you. It's my DNA that will be released from the Omnitrix. I am the alien life form that will soon overwhelm you. You are me, Benjamin.
Okay, so that's confusing as fuck for a couple of reasons, but if I went into detail now, this segment would be way too long. Just know that this part of Eon's backstory may be the worst written thing in the movie, purely because it seems to contradict things said earlier, and make some of his choices seem nonsensical. Like, for one example, if he really is the Ben from this timeline who's come back from the future after being overwhelmed by Cronian DNA, then why the fuck would he jump back centuries instead of just going to the right time immediately? He could have circumvented being captured by the Plumbers for as long as he was and having to regain the hands if he just dropped in immediately and caught everyone by surprise, but again, moving on. Throughout the movie, we're introduced to seemingly normal people that live and work within the town. It's revealed after meeting Jacobs that they're actually what's left of the Plumbers and have been undercover while watching over the hands. Only two of them really get to be characters: Doris, the restaurant owner, and Ed White, Ben's principal. They have a lot of good interactions with each other, and Ed even gets a few with the other main characters. They're both part of some of my favorite VFX shots in the movie, which I would explain, but seeing them in motion is all you really need.
And Ben, just one more thing.
There's this old Asian guy too, but he only shows up like twice and he just kinda disappears after. I really like him though, kinda wish we got to see more of him.
Oh, get ugly, you bug.
You? You're a plumber too?
Of course I am. Don't you know disguise when you see one?
That's a disguise?
No? Ha, gotcha.
The movie moves at a real quick pace, which is good sometimes, but other times it can leave things basically forgotten about until it's important again. The beginning has a big focus on Ben getting used to having a normal life, but that's basically dropped until the end. I forgot the talent show was even a thing in the movie until the characters also realized they forgot about it. Not only is there shit that loses its importance by the end, but much like the Asian guy, there are just characters that disappear for long stretches of time, and plot points that go ignored for just as long. Honestly, that might be my real problem with the movie. It's ambitious, there just clearly wasn't enough time or money to match. If there was more time and budget, things could be developed more, and they could have definitely fixed the movie's more wonky aspects. I can't bring myself to not like it though. It's very flawed, but behind every drawback was a passion that I could feel, even without looking at the behind the scenes footage. Their limitations held them back, but I'd much prefer a passionate movie that falls short over a soulless one that does the same.
It's been a long road, and it came out really well. It was super excited how it came out, and I just wanted to thank everybody who worked on the movie for doing an amazing job. I think that for those of you who did, you'll see there's a lot of pretty amazing quality work on the screen here, and it not easy.
This movie's a real oddity. You can see clearly how many limitations they had, but despite all that, they still attempted to be ambitious and make something that faithfully represents its source material. It's not as good as the show, but that's kind of a given. The show has a lot more time to set up things, develop its characters, and a lot less budgetary restrictions on what they can do, while this movie only had an hour and was much more affected by its budget due to going live action. What's here though isn't something that I'd really call bad. It's a fun watch. It's got likable characters, and despite the obvious moments where the effects fall short, it still manages to be very dynamic and mostly look good. It's just held back by the many production restrictions placed on them. You can tell this wasn't easy even without all the times the director mentions it. And while I love analyzing stuff like production history, visual effects, acting and all that, at the end of the day, you should judge something based off of how it makes you feel. Despite all the things wrong with it, this movie makes me happy, and I hope y'all can say the same. I'll see you niggas next time.